What? Hi, guys. It's August 26th, 2021. And I cannot believe that it is almost the end of the summer again. And I am back after my 2-week Patriot tour in America with my favorite guest, Mike L., who has been breaking this down for us ahead of everyone else in terms of COVID, pharma, what we need to know, what's coming in the future, and basically all things you're not hearing anywhere else. You will hear here with Michael L. Thank you, and welcome back, Michael.
Hey, welcome back from the tour. You look good for being on the road for 2 weeks.
I know, my new Space Force hat.
Love it.
Yeah,
Did
I'm
Trump
loving
get
it.
that to you?
Oh no, I wish. No, my new friend. Oh, yeah, these things are so great. I have another one coming up in Kentucky, and then Colorado Springs. It's so fun. You go and you just feel like, oh my God, these people love America. They love God. They love the country. They love the Constitution. And then you come back to New York, and you're like, oh, here we are again.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, but it's great. But I'm happy to be back with you. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of questions out there. We got the current situation. We got the future. So you're going to kind of tell us where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, I thought, because in our conversation, let's start with COVID, what's going on.
Right.
Let's talk about the vaccine a little bit. Let's dig into that a little bit. And then depending on time, we'll switch gears or we'll do another show. I've got a ton of new stuff too I wanted to cover because there's somewhere I want to take us over the next stuff.
Yeah, no, I would love to do that too. We can just quickly, I mean, there's so much news out there as it is. I think the big thing is that people are unclear on, people say this was approved, this wasn't approved, but it was approved too fast. They manipulated the approval. If you could clarify, since that's what you do is approve drugs. Yeah. Yeah,
it's funny. I'm actually in an FDA inspection right now, and I wish the inspector that's grilling me and my teams was in favor like the Pfizer, because we're putting in 12, 14-hour days answering a million questions. That's the way the process is supposed to be done.
Right.
Yeah, he's tough, but when you change all the rules and they let you walk through without any real solid data or more importantly safety data, you can pretty much punch anything out you want. So maybe let's pause a little bit and let's talk about the approval. And so the FDA did approve it, and that's going to be tough for a lot of people. It's going to be tough for the people in the military, because the argument in the past has been, as you know, they said, hey, this thing isn't approved, it's emergency use only. I've been saying since the beginning that even then the baseline and the data that they had was invalid in addition to that.
Right.
So let's talk about it a little bit. I'll do a little bit. And let's do some QA bouncing back and forth a little bit. You want to do that?
Sure.
All right. So I dug into the approval, and what's interesting about the approval, and give me a second. Let me pull it up. Where is he? Where are you? Hold on. All right. So what's interesting about the approval letter is if you look at the approval letter at the bottom, they've got some caveats. And what I mean by that is they changed the rules and what they were looking for. December 23rd, 2020, FDA removed the reference to the number of doses per vial after dilution from the letter of authorization, clarifying the instructions for the vaccination. And also all reports were going to VAERS, VAERS that we talked about in the technical. Also advised the fact sheet for healthcare providers administration vaccine to clarify the number of doses per vaccine per vial. So right off the bat, they started pulling off some of the requirements that they require.
Right.
Then they go down 2 months later, and I'm reading this right off this, and then I'm gonna expand a little bit on this. Okay. February 25th, 2021 allowed flexibility on the data of submission of monthly periodic safety reports and revised the requirements for reporting of vaccine administration errors by Pfizer. Also, this is almost comical, I'm sorry. The fact sheet for storage and transportation temperature for frozen vials directed to the provider to the correct CDC website for information on monitoring vaccine recipients. We know about the CDC, right? I don't have to finish this paragraph.
Yeah.
But then they
it's ridiculous.
It is. So On May of 2021, authorization for individuals 12 through 15 years of age reviewed safety and effectiveness data from the above part, which is the paragraphs above it, for phase 1, 2, 3 trials has been enrolled approximately 46,000 participants, including 2,200 roughly. They call them participants or subjects in clinical studies, 12 through 15 years of age. They were randomized on a 1-to-1. And so that's the other caveat. But here's the interesting thing about that, Mel. So they changed the rules of what was required, and they also allowed them to go back down in. But if you listen to those first two paragraphs, what that means is the safety data and how it's being reported is being channeled through the CDC's process. And remember the map that I put up a couple weeks ago, where what those locations were is, and that's how they received the data. But more importantly, the other piece of this is that there's actually three.
Right.
So the confirmation of who didn't have COVID is being determined by a faulty diagnostic test.
Right.
That we know is true based on the FDA and the CDC. They've said it, and they know they're in trouble because the flu season's coming up, and they got the new variant, which is a joke. I think the next one should be like ice cream variant. Because it would
something that sounds really, really nice. Or the unicorn variant.
The unicorn one is even better. And so the problem is there's going to come the new test to differentiate between those two. Right. And then the final exploding one on this one is, this was supposed to be a double-blinded or triple-blinded study. Right. Now, what that means in a clinical drug study is, within Pfizer, maybe a dozen people know who's getting what versus placebo versus the regular one. So what happens is they label them, they make the labels. So if I pick one up or you picked one up, we wouldn't know which one was the real and which one was fake. Right. Placebo. Right. The reason they do that is they don't want the PIs, the investigators, to be skewed in their data results and interpretation. It's extremely important that it's unbiased data. In addition to that, then the safety data becomes more important. And what I mean by that is, so if one of the two groups, the control group or the vaccinated group, shows an escalation of safety related issues, then they know which one it is and whether or not the drug and the efficacy is valid. Right. What happened in this case is Pfizer came back in, and for some reason, what they did is they notified all the people that had the placebo and then gave them the vaccine. So they got rid of their placebo group. There's no control group. Right. Completely. And so how that pushed through is beyond me. But I do have to say, there's still no long-term data at all, right? You don't even need long-term. I mean, think about this. The short-term, we already know that there's issues, and there's enough data and enough issues to say that, hey, we need to pull this thing off the market. If this was anything else, if you look at like something with food, right? Let's say pudding, and if pudding showed these levels of safety, this thing would be yanked off the shelf tomorrow. Yeah, that's what I've heard from everyone I've spoken to, said that this would be gone. Now, what is it though? Is it money? I don't understand the need to mandate something, because now even Pfizer says it's only 46% that it even prevents the virus, and now they have the variants, which apparently are, they have no tests for that, as the PCR test is faulty for the original COVID. But they have no test really for the variant, unless somebody gets a full-on blood test, which I don't see anyone doing. So, that's my real question is, what is this about? It really makes no sense. They can't even confirm the real COVID, let alone the other variants that are coming out. Right. That's the control thing. But, something I've been saying all along too is I told you, at the beginning, that this thing is skewed in how it's targeting a particular population, in this case, the elderly. Right. But the other shoe hasn't dropped as to what's in that protein. Right. And what I say by that is I believe that This was reverse engineering for an objective, and it hasn't come out yet. We won't see it. It might be 2 years. We don't know what's going to activate this. If it's our own immune system, if there's some type of nanotech or something else in there. We don't know exactly what that is. And that's kind of been bugging me this whole time. And I say this all the time. I actually almost every week I say, why are they pushing this when you know that you had a 99.6% success rate without doing anything.
Right. And there's, and I saw the FDA is saying, still saying ivermectin is dangerous. It said because it's used for horses and stuff. Well, every doctor that I've spoke to and many people I've seen say, no, it's like a miracle cure for this. And then still holding back hydroxychloroquine. These two things make no sense to me at all. So that's another area. It's gotten to a point where, at least where I am in New York City, not only do you need to be vaccinated to go in anywhere public, but you also, they're also forcing anyone who works in the schools, all city employees, they have to be vaccinated or they can't go back to work for something that it should be a choice. If there are therapeutics, it's really bizarre.
Yeah, but think about what just happened. Prior to this, the argument has been, this is an unapproved vaccine. We're not taking it. Right. So basically what happened is you got a bunch of knuckleheads sitting in a back room and said, okay, listen, we've been trying to push this thing. We're giving away Teslas. We're giving away world trips around the world. We're giving up free education. Lotteries. Everything, and nobody's taking this thing. What are we doing wrong? They said, because it's unapproved. So they says, okay, let's approve it. And so basically they're now forcing you. So now, because it's approved, and you still can't force people to, but for some reason they can. They don't believe that the rules apply to them, so they make up their own rules. Again, I go back to the impeachment, the second fiasco against Trump. The Senate. All of the rules said that they weren't allowed to do that, so they said, we don't like the rules. Let's vote and change the rule.
I know. Well, that's the entire monarchy up there in DC. We now have a monarchy. They don't really care about the rules or what we want or anything. It is literally an autonomous little overlords down there in DC, and they're fine with that. It don't matter at all. So we can move on from there because a lot of people are talking about that, and we have some further place to go. But basically, it was approved because they manipulated the rules to approve it. And yet there is still no long-term data whatsoever. And there are people out there that work for hospitals. I saw the head of Yale, which isn't a surprise, and a bunch of others saying there have been no deaths from the vaccine. That's a total 100% provable lie. And also that there's again, giving it to pregnant women and children, that there's no risk. Not true. So I don't know why these big doctors that have the credentials out the wazoo are out there saying things that even the layman could go on VARs or anywhere else and prove them false. But the sad part is, Michael, most people out there are just not doing their own research at all, which is shocking to me, because there is enough data out there for people to understand that it should be a choice. And B, we aren't dealing with something deadly that, you need to be vaccinated against or you're going to die. There's other options. And more than that, just there is no long-term data, none. So it's a risk and people need to know that. But again, FDA has approved a lot of stuff like glyphosate and other things that are terrible for you too. So it's not like the FDA is only approving things that are, but now they got that. So now they can start mandating it. And that's more what it's about.
It's a win. I will say this. I'd love to see the document. It's called an informed consent. If somebody has that informed consent of when they were doing the testing trials, if any of your listeners know or can get access to that, send it to me. I really would like to do that because I actually jumped on board and tried to pull the protocol that was used for the study, and it's been removed. And it's been removed. And I may have saved it. I haven't gone back in and looked at it from that perspective. But when I heard that this thing was approved, I know that was a move to screw us because it invalidates our argument of, well, it's an unapproved vaccine.
And again, they're all in it together up there, FDA, CDC, all of them. I want to say that they're not corrupt, but none of this makes any sense at all. And even in New York, there's no, de Blasio said, no religious or medical exemption. So every single person that works in the school system here and in public for the city, that they have to get it or they're out of job. And I'm hearing in New York, he's making it that if you choose not to get it and you leave your job, you don't qualify for unemployment. For something that is that has a cure. It's really amazing. It's crazy. But
the push bothers me. The push bothers me more than anything.
Me too.
Is the fact that people telling you, a lot of people probably got this, they just didn't know it. Let's say they were tired or they were showing some of those symptoms. Now,
right.
I do want to say there have been people that have been legitimately gotten this virus and they've become very ill or sadly have perished.
Right.
And then you go into the nursing homes where sadly, again, a lot of people have died. And so that part is very sad. And I don't know how much more of this we have to continue to wade through at this point. And it's just hard to watch these. And I don't remember what I was doing when I was all of a sudden, I'm in an audit this week. I'm being audited. So, and then that flash came through about the FDA that approved it. And that's going to give these corporations more firepower to demand this thing. I can tell you that some of my friends that are in companies, they're segregating where you're sitting.
No, I know. They're doing it here too. Yeah, it's really, and they're going to be doing it to children too. And then I saw that in Connecticut, and I believe now in New York and New Jersey, any school nurse can get access to any child's vaccination records and call them to tell them that they need to be vaccinated or get a booster. And now the new thing is the booster thing coming. And it's like, and again, there's at least out of Israel, they're saying that almost all the new cases are people that are vaccinated. But again, you go to our media or to any of these doctors or people that are out there talking, and they say that's not true, that it's the unvaccinated. But if you look at the data, it's not factual. So at this point, nobody even knows what they're talking about. I feel like the mental craziness that they're causing from all these different like game changes. And, it would really be good if they'd get Dr. Fauci out of there and replace him with somebody else. I don't care who, but at this point, he's causing more division than anyone else on this topic, and and he's so obviously compromised to this point. I just don't know how this narrative isn't being changed a little to make people feel like they're getting the truth. Nobody feels that way, and other people are just following the government, which we all know has not proven well in the past when it comes to this sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and you made a good point weeks and weeks ago that it was a systematic process of taking people and putting them into the decision-making positions.
Right.
And this is a long-term plan that's been kind of unwinding. As far back as I can go, I see some form of manipulation. Now, so the decisions that are being made are people that are very high up. They're directed by the cabal. Let's not fool ourselves here.
Yeah, for sure.
So this was a systematic takeover into our judicial system, our legislation, and the presidency even.
Right.
So this literally, this president isn't even real. I can say that right on yours. You don't get shut down, right? Because he's not the real president. All right. Yeah. So my point is this has been a long-term game.
Yeah.
But again, I want to stress to people that despite the appearance, they're losing.
I agree. Oh, I agree.
Okay.
It's the damage that is being done. And for me, I think the worst damage is psychological, which is the goal. If you looked at the CCP's warfare manual they said in there that this war was going to be fought without bullets, and it is being fought without bullets. It's psychological. But the sad part is that there's so many people that are unfortunately following blindly. And the worst part is, like you said, the vaxxed and unvaxxed. Now you have this group of people that look down on another group of people that are just doing their research or, are trusting their immune system or know that there's therapeutics, but they're already hostile against them. It's like, I've talked about it many times, but in Nazi Germany, this is how it started. First, they put the Jews in ghettos, saying that there was some kind of pandemic of some sort or whatever. And then from there, the health department in 1938 in Germany were allowed to take people involuntarily if they suspected that they were carrying the virus and move them to a hospital or to other facilities, which we know they never came home. So the bottom line is people need to open their eyes, because also in New York and some other places, Tennessee, some other places, they put in like they're doing in Canada, a thing that, yeah, they can involuntarily take you and put you into a quarantine camp like they have all over China if you don't do this. And now we see that they're giving the permission to school nurses to have access to students' vaccine records so that they can remind the family to get the
They need to take the
vaccine.
vaccine.
So it's just, this is very, very scary territory, because unfortunately, I'm shocked, but we have enough American citizens that are fine with being brown shirts and are fine with violating privacy and all of that in the name of, I'm not sure what, but so on that level, people have to be really vigilant and stuff, because I am seeing people, Michael, now that are just like, fine, I'll just take it. Like they're at that point.
Me too. One of my friends, he's actually from New York. He's a state
Right.
group. I grew up with this guy, and him and I have been talking over the last few weeks, and I'm not kidding you. So his wife wants to take it, he doesn't,
Right.
because we've been in communication. So he calls me up in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, listen, my wife's coming home. Can you talk to her about this?" And I says, "Well, it'd be easier if you just go to my shows, because I've already done all
Right,
this."
right.
But he doesn't want to do that, right? Too much time. So I'm not kidding you. I spent 90 minutes on the phone talking to her about this, the risk, the lack of safety, and going on and on and on about it. And she was still on the fence.
Right.
So then he texts me, he goes, "I'm really sorry." He goes, "But I have to give in to the pressure. My wife's got the vaccine, and now she's scared because I'm not, so I got to go do it."
This is what's going to happen.
So-
Yeah.
So I said to him, I go, "Rest in peace, brother. Good luck, and I hope it works." And I don't mean to put light into it.
No, I pray to God. Look, we both want none of the negative stuff to be real, and of course, and I trust God and all of that, but I just think people are being incredibly irresponsible with their lives and with their children's lives and with their spouses' lives. And then even worse, my body, my choice, shunning or, being just hostile towards somebody who's saying, I don't want an experimental drug in my body that I don't need. The bottom line is nobody needs to take this vaccine. If they would just make hydroxychloroquine available to everyone, then everyone could have the choice of taking that. But they won't, and I don't know why they're not, other than money.
Because it works. I don't think it's just money.
I don't either. I don't either, but
it can't be the money. Now, the booster shot could be a way to kind of boost that cash flow in. And, this money, and it's funny because I was doing some of my research, some of the stuff we were going to talk about was some of the secret space program, because I ran into some data about Michael Jaco, by the way.
Oh, really? Well, I want to go into that. Do you think you can segue into that?
Yeah, but my point there is because of what's going on with Donald Trump, cash flow is becoming an issue. If you listen to Charlie and you listen to everything, those banks, the Vatican vaults, and all of the major money that these people have been using is gone. So I think that this booster shot is a booster shot is actually for their income.
Yeah, Trump said it on Maria Bartiromo. He said exactly that.
Yeah.
But the whole thing has been because the doctor that I had on last week, he said that Pharma was their money was depleting as it is, that more and more people were, going towards alternative medicine and stuff already before they even started this. So the influx of cash was definitely a necessary thing to keep them all afloat. But who knows? I think it's also about the track and trace and the full surveillance. And we don't know what happens when they on the next level, when we put frequency and all that in the mix. But
I think that, and that's a good point too, Mel. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
I think the final game plan is this ascension that it looks like that we're moving into, and one of the I've been reading a lot, and I've been reading a lot of the release documents from the government and other things, and one of them was really interesting. It mentioned that, and bear with me on this comment. So they keep bouncing back like plus 20 years into the future with this anti-gravity and these different things, but the big thing is they keep trying to say, if we alter this is very complex, but if we alter this, if we do this, can we stop this ascension? If we do this, can we stop the ascension? And everything that they've been trying for the last 30 years says, doesn't matter what you do, okay? You can do all of these things, and it's not going to stop the ascension of the human consciousness here on Earth. It's not going to work. And so I think that that's part of the end game, but the other piece is, I think another big part of this is a form of depopulation. I do, and I know I'm speculating on what I'm seeing, but you know, I've dug through this data, and you've got 1 million people on your shows that do it, and I'm inside because I see it, but there's still something that doesn't jive,
Right.
and they're not breaking down some of the information, and there's some of the key components that could be used. Now, I'm not sure if some of the scientists on the white hat side have taken this down to the lab and tried to breaking that down a little bit, identify it. And the other thing that would be interesting is to break it down into its DNA composition. Now, within that DNA composition, they have to know what all those pieces are to identify all those pieces, right? So that's why I say this thing about reverse engineering. I know for a fact that these farm companies and these big tech companies have been doing testing on this type of genetic manipulation. And I actually want to do a whole show on that, because I've been researching a lot, and countries now are coming out and saying, yeah, we can actually take certain parts of plants, we can take certain parts of an animal or a human, and we can actually create limbs or for people that don't have them. Now, my point is, and this is actual real life data that I have.
Right.
What's interesting about that is, again, I stress this, if we're now starting to see it, it's been happening for a long time. So if we see that they're taking, and the reason is some of the structures of the plants with their vascular system, their watering system, it is now being utilized for body parts in animals. So it's only a matter of time before they do the same thing with humans.
Wow.
So going back to this, that's why there's something else in there that's not, we haven't identified everything in there yet.
No.
And so that's the part that bothers me. And every time we talk about this subject, I keep saying that, because, and if some of the scientists that you do, or some of the physicians won't do it, right? Because they're the doctors and they're doing it from the front line.
Right.
Guys like me are on the back line, and we're looking at the data, but what we don't have is that's one more step back in the labs and the initial feasibility and the composition of that was utilized. So because we don't have that, we don't know what's going on.
Right. And most people that I believe they're correct say that the original virus was never isolated, and that this is, like, you know, that saying it's a vaccine is a misnomer, that it's not a vaccine. And, you know, nobody's going there, though. Nobody wants to go there. So we do. We do.
You know, the other part of this, though, is I'm always about, okay, what are our options?
Right.
You know me by now, and whenever I'm confronted with these type of things, you know, what we got to do is to say, okay, this is what our options are. That's why I've been spending so much time on this frequency and this other tech. The reason I do that is the more people are aware of this information and this technology, it's going to create this synergy. The more of us that are looking into this and finding this information, the faster we come to a solution. Right. And so all of my research on the consciousness that we talked about, the frequency that we talked about, right, the DNA makeup, the genetic, the reason I'm going down that path and I spend so much time on it is we know that there's something up against us, but we don't know the big picture.
Right.
So the more research and the information that we have, the better position we are to battle this. It's just like if this was real war.
Right.
And let me use an analogy here. If this was really real war, and let's take the group in the Civil War, and let's take the group from World War II. Now,
Right.
you know what's going to happen, right? If these two groups go at each other, that's a bloodfest. You know,
Right.
it'd be a great video game. But the other piece of that, I'm sorry, the other piece of that is, what are these guys going to do? They're going to say, they got these tanks, right? They got these things flying at us. What do we got to do to beat this thing? Because if we don't figure this out, they're going to annihilate us.
Right.
So that strategy is no different than what we're doing here. When I'm on the pharma side and I'm seeing all of this stuff,
Right.
and I'm on the inside and I see this, again, the reason I came forward was because I realized, and one more point before I do that, a bunch of emails that people have been sending me recently are doctors, people in the pharma industry that says, Mike, you're right. I now realize what you've been saying is correct. So it's been great. And by the way, I answered all the emails up
That's so
until
nice.
a week and a half ago. And I've been talking to a bunch of the people, not everybody yet. I got this list, but what's really great is they're saying, Mike, I see the same thing.
Right.
So now the fact that we know that this is it, we know masks, we know the COVID, right? We know these variants. We knew that there's going to come up with 22, 23 different variations.
Right.
That's the control part to keep us tied down like a bunch of animals.
Right.
So the faster we gain information, the faster that we figure out how to beat this. My thing is, if we're going to beat COVID, we've got to figure out this other part of this with regards to, can we use frequency? Can we use some of this DNA modification? Is it as simple as us raising our conscious level as a society, and we can beat it that way from that energy? That's why I go down this area. That's why I've been spending so much. Oh my God, I took a quantum physics course.
You told me. How'd that go?
I didn't. I didn't do well, but I
appreciate you taking the effort though, because but it does explain a lot of stuff. That's the hard part, you know.
First and foremost, you know, there's a bunch of these little 22-year-old high-tech kids that are in there, right? And they're like getting all this stuff, and I'm like, oh wait, let me get out my pen, right? And I'm like, let me get out my pen, I can draw a picture, right? And but but the good part is, Mel, is I at least got out what I needed, right? So I got to make it understand. Am I going to be able to understand completely the concept of anti-gravity and how it relates to time? No, I mean, but by the way, I'm still I'm taking another course. It's a short course. It's a 6-week course because I just need the general information, right? But I'm not going back to school. There's no way. But my point is we need to move forward as a society and as a group. And your listeners are here because they want answers. Their listeners are here because they know something's not right.
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to reveal the truth in every one of these areas and what's been going on. We know this government's corrupt. So let's stick on this subject because I know we're tight on time today. Let's set up another session for next week.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Because here's what I need to go into. I want to go into what happened in Antarctica. I know a lot of what's happened now. Remember, I've been asking for
just give we have at least 10 minutes left. Why don't you just give an overview of how that's going to connect? And then if you're available Thursday or whenever, what is it? It is Thursday. If you're available Monday or someday next week, we'll go into it further. But if you can just give a little preview as to how this connects, because it's really important that people understand it's not some kind of conspiracy theory. This is real and it does connect. Yeah.
You know, but the other thing it does is it identifies who some of these key players are that have been manipulating us over time.
Right.
And so the cabal, as far back as the 1930s, were already actively pursuing certain areas, right? And so Antarctica was a big piece, and I've been asking about Antarctica. And what's interesting is I ran into, by chance, 2 interviews with Michael Jacob.
Right.
You know, so and it's funny what he said, and because it matches what I've been learning and matches what I've been learning from some of the people that I know I can trust. Right. And so that was kind of interesting. But the reason I want to bring this up is it relates to Germany. You keep bringing up Germany, and it relates to Germany and their advancement in tech, and why they had a technical advantage against the America,
right,
and the British. And The other thing that it does is it identifies what really happened down in Antarctica in the two battles.
Right. You mean with that
So-
Admiral Byrd?
Yes, and more specifically, it gives us more information of what really happened, because the reason I say that is it will take us to right now with the tech that they're using against us.
Right.
That's where I want to go with this thing now. But so that's where we're going to go. I'll do a Monday session because
Okay, cool. Perfect.
I've
Great.
got 22 pages I want to go to. But for the listeners, let's do some wrap up. I'll answer a few more of your questions on the COVID, or if you want to talk about masks, what do you want to do? What have the listeners been asking you?
Well, mostly, people are very confused about the conflicting information. There have been a lot of deaths after the vaccine, and they're not telling, and horrible side effects and all kinds of stuff, and yet they haven't pulled it. But then on the other side, there are a lot of people that are having buyer's remorse or jab takers remorse or whatever. And they're wondering, because the craziest thing that's happening is, what I'm hearing is that they're saying, oh, there's an uptick in the children getting it. But what I'm hearing from other doctors is, no, the uptick in children getting it is because of the mask wearing. Remember, they made masks mandatory for children about 2 months ago, and some parents are going with that. And then suddenly kids never had it, and now they're sick. And then, so what I'm hearing is that the mask is really what's causing that it's not that there is, and this Delta variant, there is no test for it except for a DNA test, but the first one wasn't isolated. So I just think the cognitive dissonance of thinking that, it's fine, you're supposed to take it, the government told you to take it, and then, but I'm hearing all this stuff and am I gonna die? It's like two different things. And I just feel like people are really not sure, and it's causing a lot of anxiety.
Well, again, this is a scare tactic, right? This is a strategy that the evil people are doing, and it is confusing. And the people that are here listening to you, they're listening to it for a reason, because they know something's not right. So what I want to say to them, and a lot of the people that I email, is you guys aren't crazy. There is something up, okay? There's a bigger plan at play here. And now people are starting to realize that the election was the tipping point,
right,
of awakening. And I know people were frustrated. Why didn't we on January 6th just come in, take over? But we had to see everything. And what we're seeing now is everything being played out in front of us that's been played out in the past.
Right.
The patterns are the same. I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I said, hey, this vaccine, this is a pattern. This goes back 100 years from the first vaccine. They create the virus. They already had the vaccine. We got a cure. It's a control thing, right? But this is what's been going on. The difference is now is people are waking up. It started with the election. Now we're realizing our government is corrupt, but more importantly, we're realizing our entire government is corrupt.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, I was, okay, we can deal with that. I'll keep listening to Donald Trump. I'll listen to X22. I'll listen to you and others. And hopefully we're going to get over this hump. But then what happens? Then all of a sudden, COVID comes out and the data is being manipulated. And it was no surprise that I was doing research on something by accident, and I ran across this and I go, excuse me, can I say this? Mm-hmm. Holy shit. This data was wrong. And so that was how now I step forward. And there's a lot of doctors for you and a lot of doctors and scientists on my ends. We all get together and say, hey, something's not right, man. And so this is how we got here, guys.
Right.
Now what we got to do is figure out how. On a positive note, on the legal side, the judicial side, what's happening? We're changing the rules. We're fixing.
Right.
The other part is on the spiritual side. Have you seen such a surge in spirituality in our country?
No, and I love it. I love it. And that's why I go to these events, because it's so positive. So many, from all over. It's like I can't wait till the next one, because it's from all walks of life, all races, all everything. Everyone has a message, but you know what? We're uniting under the fact that we're all American, and we're all in it right now together. We don't need
Yeah.
to talk about anything other but right now and saving our country from this communist socialist globalism that is running that infested sewer down in DC right now as a monarchy. And I'm seeing more and more, we the people, black, white, gay, straight, all come to these events. And it's like, we're all just
Lot of love.
Americans. And we all
lot of
love
love.
America and God
Yeah.
and country. And we're not going to let our country fall. And that is what they've wanted the whole time for 100 years, easily, if not since the birth of America, we know. But again, it's the same people. But I wanted to say something. People can still resist. I think people are being, we have to resist. We have to take a stand. We have to deal with the consequences if we are in a war. We are on the front lines, and that it's wrong that the government is saying you must do anything that has to do with putting something in your body that regardless that you do not need. And the biggest thing is if hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin are good for treating it and other things, and then there's preventatives like Dr. Z's protocol and other things like that, and the 99.9% chance that you'll recover, and the fact that the flu and the cold disappeared. If you're like me, you're like, I don't need it. Let me see what happens in a couple years when and then maybe I will, but it's, I'm not ready now. And now we're being persecuted. That's where I think the real line is. And even if you got vaccinated or pro-vaccine or whatever, you should still in your heart, I believe, as a good human, a God-loving, human on this planet, should respect that the other guy doesn't trust it and doesn't want to just follow orders. And if you're vaccinated, it shouldn't affect you, what I do.
You're right on. Really, we're facing two issues right now, Mel. The first one is what you just stated, and that's 100% accurate, is we still can push back. It's still our right. And don't think under any circumstances because of this push and this surge that you're doing something wrong. You
Right.
have your rights. It's in the Constitution.
Right.
And so that's the most important piece, guys, is you can keep fighting. And I also, though, believe that the ones that took it and now regret it and realize that they made a mistake, we have to figure out what to do with them too. And there is hope, guys. So keep pushing forward, and because this is a long process, guys, don't start waning down and lose that energy, because
right. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And we got to go the other direction. We can't, because like I said, people are calling me now that would never have gotten it and saying, maybe I should just get it. Like I told you, I had a friend turned away at a major steakhouse in New York City because he didn't have his pass. And anyone that's downloading this all these track and trace things, they have to go look at who's behind them, because I dug down when I looked into the Excelsior pass that you need in New York City. And you remember, you and I talked about in the very beginning when they first locked us down, Cuomo came on stage with Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt, two of the most nefarious characters on the planet, and said they were going to reimagine New York. Well, 18 months later, they've reimagined it into a dystopian, no cops, very sick, twisted situation here, closed down of everything. Now they're doing the mandatory vaccination. So any small businesses or restaurants that survived won't now, because again, only 26% of the Black community and 50% of the entire New York City, or less than that, have been vaccinated. So now you can't go in anywhere public in New York City, and then you have to download these passes. Well, I went under like, who does the Excelsior pass? Then I see this one name of this company. So I go look at that company, and then I see all this stuff. And then I see that they're shell. Right. I say that they're shell companies. They're not real companies. I mean, they are, but they're not. So I go to the next one. How does this? And at the very bottom of all the track and trace, all these passes, these downloaded things that give you a QR code, mind you. So people have to understand, that's what's going on. You have to put in your vaccine data from your card, your name, your address, your birth date, everything. And then it sends you a QR code. Well, all that data goes to several different places. But at the bottom of this entire thing is World Economic Forum financing it through a charity type thing, a trust, of course. We got Microsoft, Apple, a bunch of shell companies underneath are owned by George Soros, and a couple like Serco and some other UK-based companies. But basically, it's the same people that created the virus are the ones that are involved in the track and trace software. So that you are downloading.
I'm wondering one thing on that too, Mel, when you're doing that research, I'd be curious to see also if there's a consent somewhere in one of those screens. And what I mean by that is a consent for them to access your medical records or confirmation. The reason I say that is, I told you this offline, but what's interesting is now in the doctor's office, when we go back to go into the doctor's office, there's this new form that we have to fill out, and it's a DNA profile. And the excuses, and I'll show you, I'll put it up on the screen.
It's so crazy.
It says that we can use that to predict future illnesses, and we're going to utilize that information. And so my point is when you're doing your part of that research, because a lot of your research, by the way, bleeds into what I do.
Right.
And it's amazing how we gel like that. But I'm really curious when you're going through those, also take a look to see if there's a point in that process that you're consenting to giving up information, because I'm seeing it everywhere. And there's this surge now to find all this information. And I think you're right. I think if you follow that down, it's going to a very elite group of people.
It is.
And they want that information.
It is. And it's Bill Gates is the main guy on all of this stuff. But there's also, I can't remember what it's called right now. It starts with an M, MITRE, MITRE, I think is the name. It's actually a Department of Defense / contracted thing that is very involved in all of this that nobody's ever heard of. You know, it's like when Trump said to, I guess it was Leslie Stahl or some negative Nelly, said that there was a group of people that controlled everything, all the money, all the power on this earth, basically, and nobody's heard their names. I've done my best to say their names, but it's never a surprise when I start scratching off everything, because I do believe something with the vaccine and everyone getting it is about track and trace, because not surprisingly, in 1996, David Rockefeller, who's the head of all the New World Order stuff, basically, the top of the heap, he said that his unelected official goal would be to have everyone microchip, track and trace. And I think that this is part of it, but we can't prove that yet. We're trying. But when I started, because most people would never do that. So I see it's Excelsior Pass, and I see it's being used in New York and LA, or California and New York, Gavin Newsom and Cuomo. Then I go down, who made that? Who's behind? What technology is behind this? You see like this company, it's like VCI or something. And then you go under, and then you keep going until you find the names. And I knew I would find in there Fauci, Soros, World Economic Forum, Gates, and I did. I knew I'd find them connected to the tracing software that everyone is willingly downloading and saying it's not a big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. I mean, yes, it is. That means that your data that you're willingly putting in there, just like now you are officially by multiple agencies and multiple tech companies being watched, period.
You know what would be interesting for us to do is take the package insert for any of the vaccines.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Pfizer. So if anybody has it readily, send it to my email.
Right.
I think what we need to do is break down the components that we know are in there.
Right.
And then break down the companies that provide it. So to make a drug.
Right.
To make a drug, and by the way, we are required to qualify and audit anybody that uses any component for any drug anywhere. Okay. Right. We're required to, and on the farm side. So before they make that drug, you've got pieces that are being made from companies that are being subcontracted by Pfizer, and they're dumping all their stuff in, and they shake it up, right? And then they throw it in the vat. Right. So what would be really interesting is to identify all the companies that are feeding the components that go into that drug. Right. Because if we do, and we backtrack like you're famous for, and that's, by the way, one of the reasons I reached out to you is because one time you were working on something and I was working on it, and I got stuck like right here trying to follow a company. You got all the way down here. I'm like, you know what I mean? I was like, she blew me out of the water. But
well, you just find, what I do is I find the names of people,
and then you dig,
and then I try to find where they are, and then it's connected that way.
You know, but that's the way it works. And so what I'd like to do is, and this might be something we can do, let's take that package insert, let's break down those components, so try to find the companies that are digging in there. Right. Maybe there's a mistake. Now, what I mean by maybe there's a mistake is maybe we're going to identify something with regard to nanotech, a company that has, some type of DNA or gene modification. Right. genome, something. So if we break that down into those little pieces, I wonder what we'll find.
Yeah, yeah. And, again, we still have the Epstein boomerang involved with all this, and Dr. Lieber up there at Harvard, who's doing the nanotech stuff on Epstein's dime, but it turns out it was on Bill Gates's dime. So I think this is all connected to all of that. But I will see you if you're available Thursday. Let's do the Antarctica Thursday, because everyone wants to know about that. And I just wanted to jump into the truth about the Pfizer approval and how it was manipulated to make that happen, so that now we're forced to do something. And I want people to be very careful. If you do it and you get one of those cards, I would be very careful about downloading any of these track and trace software from the government. It's really, you are putting yourself out there to be fully surveilled by the government and have no freedom of your medical records, period. So, that's something people have to take into account. Somebody said to me, well, it's just easier. I said, yeah, it's easier. Now they completely can track you everywhere you go, have all you gave them. And, on there, you're giving consent to something you don't even know.
That's
Nobody reads it. Nobody reads it.
Yeah, they always just click that button so they can move on. But that button is a death wish.
I know. And it's changed over the years. If all people have to do is look at the truth about Facebook and Twitter and where they came from and DARPA, and it's changed over the years to give you more and more information, but people still never read it. And at this point, it's saying basically, the thing that Excelsior passed, when I read all the way down, literally your health information is now no longer yours, and that they're going to track people. And God forbid, they're going to be tracking kids. Why are they giving nurses at public schools access any child's health records?
Yeah, but remember though, they in some of the states though, they passed a law saying that they can give, they don't have to tell the parents, and they can give these kids that vaccine.
Yeah.
And so imagine them coming back in and go, listen, you need to take this vaccine. You're going to be really sick if you don't take the vaccine. At
the school nurse. And that's already happening in Ohio. I've got a report. So I will see you Thursday. Just send me a good time, and we'll go there. Thank you again, Michael. You're always the best.
All right. Bye-bye. Stay safe.